Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Sister Circle. Today we have Hollie Johnson with us. And Hollie, I would love for you to just share with us who is Hollie Johnson?
Wow, that's a big answer.
Yeah.
No, let's simplify it. I am a
Oh,
holistic
shit.
woman who comes from Michigan originally. So I was born in Michigan and grew up in a very typical urban environment. So I learned about health and things like that in pockets as I was growing up, mixing wheat germ in my cereal or let's do smoothies. Um, but living like any other normal kid in America. Then I toured into Asia and came over to Australia. And somewhere in between there, I learned a lot about organic foods and understanding the toxins that we put into our body. So my mom was really big on that. She had a whole store about recycled and reusable type things or things that are healthy, non-toxic, and absolutely amazing for us. So I took all of it with me when I went to Asia and found, oh, that's really hard to do that over here in China, trying to be organic and whatnot. But it gave me a really different education in learning how Chinese medicine works and how the Chinese look after their health. So at least I had that foundation. So me, I'm all about inquisitive curiosity, wanting to learn. And so that's what Holly Johnson is all about, figuring out what works best for me, how to help myself, learning more about things so I can understand how to best utilize it. And my health journey has been an interesting one. So yeah, I'm now living in Australia with three children and a partner who's also very health minded and focused on optimal performance, and bringing and sharing that whole concept to people everywhere I go.
I love that. That's amazing. And it sounds like it really started from your mom. Can you talk a little bit more about that relationship when you were just a kid? The reason I asked too is because I know as a kid, it's like your parents tell you, oh, you have to eat this way, you have to eat that way. And it's like, but like my friends aren't doing that. So how was she able to navigate that with you?
Well, I think it wasn't pushed hard. It was definitely you have to eat your carrots. So I pretended to eat my carrots and spit them out later. Um, she didn't keep stuff in the house that was really sugary, and bad for you. But I would occasionally have my Fruit Loops, or I would occasionally have, lollies or candy or things like that, right? Most of the food was cooked and it was a treat to go out to eat. This I was born in 74. So in the 80s, it really was a very different lifestyle, and people weren't quite so I guess addicted to fast food in the same way they are now. And that would probably be the worst of it, really. My grandparents loved going out for Chinese or going out for Italian, or cooking at home. And so we had a lot of those home-based meals. My mom decided to take a turn for the better when she quit smoking and get that whole health kick going, was listening to Tony Robbins, and whatever she was doing in her journey, I just got snippets of it. So
Wow.
I think that planted seeds.
Yeah. Wait, your mom was listening to Tony Robbins?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so incredible.
He had his first tapes out, I don't know, in the early 90s, late 80s or something like that. And I remember her playing the tapes in the car.
Wow, that's amazing. Small world. So how has that transitioned to just your lifestyle now with your children and your family?
Sure. Well, I think that because I was on such a wild journey of my own of self-discovery. I mean, I really did have a completely flipped personality from my teenage and early 20s. Just low self-worth and understanding about, the world around me, and it was that curiosity that drove me forward to resolve that. Um, I did a lot of things that would have damaged my body. I made a lot of choices that would have damaged my body. So I think I had a real big pivot point in India when I was in India having a great time touring around, discovering, historical things and learning a lot about the culture. The very last day that I was supposed to be there, I fell really sick. 3
Mm.
days, completely delirious in a closet. And the only thing that was provided for me was a safe space and water. So I woke up to find myself, having been carted into a closet because they didn't have my room available anymore, and to learn what had happened. And then it took a week of recovery. And I didn't have any money left because it was the end of my trip. So I'm, asking for a hand here or there to find a place to stay while I'm sick and get ready to get prepared to head back to China where I was staying. That whole experience really drove home the self healing. It drove home the amazing part of the body to resolve its own stuff. And like I said, I'd done a lot of things previously that would have put damage into the body. So, it's really something to think about, that this body that we carry can be so phenomenal to take a lot of load emotionally, physically, even spiritually. If people go into the dark way, that's a nasty spiritual load that can really put damage through the body. And obviously, I'd been doing enough work that my body said, let's expel some of the stuff, let's get rid of it. And I had the time and capacity somehow there to do all of it and come out feeling fine. It drove me a lot. By the time I got to Australia, living organically and holistically and all of that was kind of already set in.
Wow. Do you mind sharing, or do you even know like what caused your sickness or what was?
No idea.
Wow.
Because I'd been living in China, I was sort of already acclimated to, whatever parasites, toxins that kind of go in a water that from somewhere else. Um, I didn't arm myself with all the vaccines people want you to get when you travel. So it could have been something I ate. It could have been an exposure somehow or another. I mean, I didn't just drink whatever water people gave me off the street. I always drank bottled water, but it was still something weird. And I've got one instance where I was in Khajuraho and this young boy was following me around everywhere, as they often do, tourists. And at the end of the day, end of the trip, he said, "Let's go have lunch before you leave." And he shared his food from the wrong hand. Now, I made a comment and said, "Wait a minute, why did I eat that?" I just, automatically we kind of get used to, sharing, and it wasn't a problem. Then I realized he gave it to me in the wrong hand. And I went, "That's the hand you wash with." He goes, "Right hand, left hand, we wash hands, it's fine." And it's the only thing I think of that I did wrong. So I went, it could have been from that, but it would have taken 2 days. So 2 days later is when I felt really sick. So I'm not sure that I could put that on him.
Wow. And it sounds like, I mean, based on what you've said so far, it sounds like you do a lot of traveling. So how has that really, I mean, I know when I travel, sometimes it's difficult to still eat the same way, like from a, holistic lifestyle and things of that nature. How have you been able to really do that traveling?
Well, I think it's a part of close your eyes and hope for the best, and you just eat what's available. The other part is just putting that vibration into the food. I'm here learning about another culture, so I am grateful to find out if they have certain farming practices or how they might, deal with acquiring, meats, fruits, vegetables, etc. I know in China they really did not like eating raw vegetables. To have a salad is very unusual there because they're so used to going to the market, everything's on the ground and the ground's dirty. So they're
Mm.
not thinking about it's safe to wash and eat. But I always washed everything. Um, and I got used to washing with baking soda and vinegar and just trying to, cleanse as best as I could. So that's where if I had controlled my own food, I could sort of monitor that a bit better. If I was out to eat, I just be there in gratitude and really feel like this is provided, with all good intentions, and just eat my food. If it tasted good, it felt good, then I knew it must be good.
I love it. That's amazing. Now, how has this transpired to where you are today with your business and just continuously embracing this lifestyle? How does that look?
Um, I think it went from being really pedantic. When I first fell pregnant, I was really pedantic. I wanted this baby to have the best opportunity. I wanted them to come out as healthy as possible. So I went through cleansing detox and, made sure everything in the house was as non-toxic as possible. And it's kind of that extremism, right? And some people really looked at me like that, like I was an extremist. And I said, no, I'm not. It's just the way I prefer to have these things in my house. I don't buy palm olive because it's on sale. I still buy, whatever my eco brand is, hopefully on sale, because it's more important to me to embrace a healthier lifestyle than it is to just save a penny. So that's where people's minds really had a hard time wrapping around because clipping coupons or buying things on sale or, going to the cheapest shop was more important to them. That's changed because lifestyle and, funds and everything changes, but I still maintain the integrity of that as much as possible. I still use natural deodorants and non-toxic face creams and, you look in my bathroom, you're going to see a whole lot of that holistic, natural, organic stuff, but you also see a bit of Sensodyne because of the pain in my teeth from wearing out my gums. You're going to see Schwarzkopf hairspray because sometimes it's down my hair and they don't really make organic hairspray. You trade off, and I look at it as if I accept a certain level of toxicity in my life, it just means I need to be more diligent in how I look after my body. Um, I've had gut issues myself, so that would blow your mind, or maybe it wouldn't. The people that I've talked to about it kept directing me towards different ways of dealing with it that just didn't work for me. And so I found the more I continued a non-toxic lifestyle, the better I felt. Working with naturopaths and different professionals that understand gut health. I've tried all sorts of things to try and resolve my gut issues, and it sort of works for a bit and then it falls off, and then it sort of works for a bit and falls off. Um, it's still a journey that I'm on, and it's still a discovery that I'm on. So I just stay curious.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's all you can do, right? Is to stay curious, to just learn as much as you can and do what feels good for you and just really listen to your body. Now, I know you talked a lot about just the different types of toxins that are out there, especially when it comes to our cleaning supplies, skincare, things of that nature. Can you just share a little bit about the things that you may look out for that determine if you're going to purchase this particular product or not?
Sure. Uh, Glyphosate has been in our foods and in our garden supplies and chemicals and things for some time, and I really have been opposed to that for a long time. It's been nice to hear some medical professionals talking about how glyphosate's quite damaging to reproductive systems. So I definitely make sure I avoid any products that had any possible contact with that as much as possible. When it's not feasible to understand, I just have to go with it. Looking at bottles and ingredients, I'm looking at a lot of things that are like the negative sulfates. You have SLSs and parabens and stuff like that. Some people don't feel like that aggravates, and that's not a problem for them. But in all the things that I've learned about it, it's not a benefit for us. It's really a toxicity. So I just eliminate anything that uses that. I've had people say polysorbate 80 and different polysorbates are not good. So if it's not in there, great. If I see something that says polysorbate, it's the only thing. Everything else I can see in those ingredients I'm recognizing and familiar with, it sort of lends me to feel like, okay, maybe that's not one of the toxin things. Why would they put that one thing in? And that's how I sort of make my decision. I sort of weigh up what are these ingredients? What is this one if I don't know it? Asking a friend who's worked with chemicals, just looking it up. I'd say that's the biggest thing that people think I'm a little mad about is I always look at ingredients. And so,
No, that's true. I do the same thing. I know my mom, for example, right now, she's doing a fundraiser with her sorority. And she had messaged me or text messaged me a couple of days ago talking to me about it. And they are selling popcorn. But for me, I have IBS. So I had to look at the ingredients and the popcorn and see if this was something that I could even eat. And I could not because it had is it called maltodextrin in it. And for me, that causes inflammation in my body, which triggers my IBS. So I was like, this is great. I'm glad that you all are doing this, but I can only contribute just through monetary funds and not actually purchasing any of the products because I can't eat them. And if I can't eat them and I know that it has that in it, I just don't feel comfortable even sharing that with my audience either, because I know that that can also cause inflammation in their body. So it's just it's just very interesting what you can find when you do just Google it. And that's really what happened. I said, okay, like I had never done that before, never Googled ingredients, but going through this process, you look at things differently and you're just more aware of your surroundings. So I think that's super helpful. Now, I know you talked a little bit about the reproductive system, and I forget the name of the ingredient that you said, but what is that? What is that, and what does it do to the reproductive system?
glyphosate is something that they've used in weed killer. So
Oh.
they've included glyphosate in a number of things as for whatever purpose, I'm not sure. Um, so Roundup is pretty famous, and a lot of people were trying to get Roundup off the shelves because that was spraying fruits, vegetables, and whatnot, and it actually leaches into the food. So, uh, uh, why is his name going right out of my head? Oh, I really can't stand it. I'll have to send that through to you.
Okay.
So the doctor who was sharing a lot of that information said they did studies on glyphosate with the rats and found didn't affect the person taking the glyphosate or getting that exposure first. What they found is that it affected the next generation. And what was interesting about the next generation and the
Mhm.
effect was its reproductive system. There were some failures there and some things that other issues that may have come up in those rats. I forget now. The thing that impacted me the most was their offspring were sterile. So it wasn't the first generation, it was the third generation of offspring that were sterile from the glyphosate exposure. And this was
Wow.
repeated. So they found this was a consistent result. Now, I know we're not rats, but I know that they use rats to try and understand how this could have an impact on humans. What that told me is this is a product that's going to impact your reproductive system and make it very challenging for people to get pregnant, if at all. So I think that had something more to do with males than females. I think the males um, were affected more strongly, and I don't know if that translates the same in humans. But we've had enough glyphosate exposure now to be in third generation of humans. And so when I look at things that seem statistically high in getting pregnant and people miscarrying, I can't help but wonder if it has to do with that. So I
Mm,
question it. I don't presume it, and I don't tell people, oh, you might have glyphosate exposure and that's why you're having problems, because that's not something I could ever say, and nor do I think the scientists could because I don't think they're studying it. But I
right.
can say, if it's going to be that toxic in that way, I just don't want it. I don't want the risk. So I know
Yeah.
I've been exposed because pretty much everybody in our generations have been exposed. And so it's more a matter of what can I do to limit that exposure more and more, and how can we work at doing better things for the body to try and detox and cleanse and and bring in just more wholesome, natural, safe things for our body to deal with so that it may have that opportunity to heal and make sure our children are getting that so that they're limited from that exposure and that they can heal and possibly find whatever toxic intake that affects the generations can just be eradicated through a change in behavior.
There's just so many different ways to get to the next generation. And what I'm learning now is like within these ways, what are we doing every single day to make sure that we are educating ourselves and that we are knowledgeable of these certain things so we can limit the exposure or prevent them altogether. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, if you find the doctor, please let me know because I definitely want to read more about that as well. I think that's like a super huge that's a huge topic. That
It
more
is, and
people
I'm
need
like,
to know
his
about.
his name is such an easy name. It's just I'm looking up, trying to look it up just while I'm talking to you to go.
I hate that too. And it's like on the tip of your tongue when you're like, oops.
Right there.
Yes, yes. Now,
Okay.
Holly,
I know people may be listening to this and they might know exactly who I'm talking about, and it's so embarrassing. But that he is a younger doctor, and I think he learned a lot from his mother, who was, I can't remember if she was a doctor or whatever. I know that he did some tours over in Africa. He did like a lot of birthing and stuff. But he actually was discovering his route, right? And that's when he discovered so much about a lot of the things that are affecting us negatively and affecting birth rates and such. And I think that's why he took such a keen interest in that study. Um, but yeah, he's an alternative doctor. Some people like to say, "Oh, what do you know about it?" Well, he does seem to know a lot about it. He's not carrying the torch for, take drugs and feel better. He's carrying the torch for, let's pay attention to what we put in our body and let's find alternatives so we don't need those drugs.
right,
And, in the medical industry, those doctors aren't fondly looked upon these days. So, I kind of feel like if there's a doctor not fondly looked upon, I want to know why. And he's probably somebody I like because he's really interested in helping us discover what works best for us.
right, exactly. And that's really what it's all about. Now, if you were to give us just some practical steps that we can take today, just from what we've talked about so far, ingredients and really looking at, how we just put things into our body, what are some practical steps that you would give us today?
Um, well, I guess the first practical is just pay attention to what's in it. It's probably the easiest way to say no to something that you're feeling a bit guilty about wanting to have in the first place. I personally have gone away from sugar, so I do check for things like maltodextrin and the different types of sweeteners that are being used to know if that's something I know I can tolerate well. Um, Making your own food, I'm one to say, yes, I'm time limited. It is hard for me to make my own. So I see a lot of these people online showing us how easy it is to make your own bread and do your own stuff. And I go, kudos to you. I wish I had energy and time for doing that. Um, but really searching out your health foods and alternative places to see things and find that they're not really priced so much higher. The pricing could be on par with something that's not on sale. But, if you're really paying attention to thin-skinned fruits that could be absorbing things, getting those as organic and clean as possible compared to, say, a banana, or watermelon where it's got a thick skin, or oranges, you're running safer those ways in that anything on the outside of it's generally going to be taken off. And just being mindful of, how much are you taking in? There's lots of people that work with toxic chemicals if they're aircraft engineers, let's just say, or, working in mines or, in automotive. And if you go home and eat clean food, it's a nice counterbalance to the toxins you have to be exposed to in your workplace. So you don't have to go crazy with it, but if you just start making those little changes of, doing things a little bit differently, it can really change the way you feel and think because it's clearing the mind and getting that fogginess out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Holly. I certainly appreciate your time, and I know our sisters do too. Can you just share a little bit with us if anyone wanted to connect with you further? How can they reach you?
Sure. So, Be Yours is something that I created a social enterprise. It's an acronym for Be Your Own Ultimate Resolve Solution. And it actually comes out of the further growth I've had in learning about our spine, our nervous system, and understanding the things that can impede us from feeling our best. And it works a lot into moving from the physical and the spiritual into the emotional. And if we have these emotional blockages and we can get those out of our way, we might be able to see better how to live the way we actually want to live, feeling our best. And then so you can find Be Yours on Facebook, you can find Be Yours on Instagram, or Holly Be Yours if you look that up.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. Queen, thank you so much for tuning in. It truly warms our heart that you're taking the time out of your day to connect with us. If you'd like to connect with our guests further, you can find their information located in the description section of this episode. And if you found this episode helpful, share with another queen, and don't forget to connect with the Holistic Sister Circle on Instagram and Facebook. And until next week, stay blessed. Mwah.